1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, this is Jewish Talk on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Streaming live on the college station and on TuneIn.com and on the iHeartRadio app. And of course, all week long you'll find this program reposted on Spreaker.com. Don't forget, everybody, this is Rabbi Pearl, and join us each and every week from 8:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. And today we're going to be discussing the deeper meaning of the particular time in the year. This is the 3 weeks considered the saddest period of the Jewish calendar. And our focus today is all about the temple. The reason behind the seriousness of this period of time is because at the end of the 3 weeks, the first and second temples that stood in Jerusalem were destroyed. The first were by the Babylonians, the second by the Romans, and ever since that time, we've always remembered that event. And today we're going to go into more deeper reason of the significance of what we're missing and what the significance of this temple was all the way back then. But first, to give us a little bit of a background, I wanted to ask you the question, which is the most important part in your home? How is your home designed? Is your home focused on the kitchen? Or is your home focused on the library or some other relaxation part of the house? So let me share with you the following. A huge fireplace dominated the room, in which a fire blazed round the clock. To its right were the food preparation areas. A massive oak table seating 14 indicated that the food in this home would be eaten right here, within sight of where the staff of the butchers and the chefs had prepared it for consumption. It was also obvious that this was the epicenter of the building, while the other rooms were the sleeping alcoves, the storage rooms, and the guest reception areas. They filled a secondary role to the structure's center space. And the architect explained, "My design recaptures the home's initial primal function." What was that? To shelter and nourish its inhabitants. So this architect, he says, my design for a new home for the new millennium may be revolutionary, but only because we have drifted away in recent centuries from the home's initial primary function. You see, the architect explains, the kitchen moved from the core of the house to its periphery. It shrunk in size, sometimes to minuscule proportions, or it became little more than a showcase for expensive gadgetry. The dining room table devolved into an undersized kitchen table, and then to a small countertop at which one perches to grab a bite. So the architect explains, my design represents the endeavor to recapture the original purpose of the home, which is to shelter and nourish its inhabitants. In steps a second architect. There was a smattering of applause on the first architect's presentation. Then the second architect revealed his design. At first glance, the second architect's model was similar in form and dimension to the first, but a close examination revealed that it's fundamentally different in the structure. You see, the kitchen and the other service areas were out in the courtyard. The building core was an intimate room, furnished with bookshelves bearing a collection of ancient and modern volumes. It was a space for people to pursue intellectual study, listening to the heart-stirring music, and engage in soul-stirring dialogues. Now, is that all we are? The architect said, bodies to eat? As you can see, the second architect explained, I have taken the very opposite approach than my esteemed the first architect. Yes, the home should cater to our visceral needs, but is that all it is? Is that all we are, bodies to eat? To me, the primary function of a home is a house and facilitate our spiritual self. The self that thinks and feels, the self that gains and imparts knowledge and wisdom, the self that thrives on receiving and sharing joy. God desired a home in this world. The Hasidic Masters explains, this is the purpose for which God created all the worlds, all the spiritual worlds, lower worlds, all for the purpose of what we do with it in our lives. Following the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, God instructed that a model home be built, a structure that will embody on a highly condensed, intensified scale God's vision of why He made this world, in this physical world. Therefore, the portable Mishkan, the tabernacles, was built in the desert to accompany the children of Israel in their journeys, later achieving more permanent form in the Beis HaMikdash, the holy temple that we were discussing today, that would be built in Jerusalem. Now, a model home that embodies on a highly condensed, intensified scale, it has to embody God's dwelling and vision of this dwelling place. The design, therefore, and the construction of the tabernacles are described in great detail, beginning in Exodus 25. The sanctuary itself consists of two chambers, an outer chamber, the holy, that housed the menorah, the table where the 12 showbreads were displayed, and a small altar for burning incense. The inner Holy of Holies contained the ark which held the Torah. The courtyard enclosing the sanctuary contained a large outer altar on which the sacrifices and meal offerings were offered. So here's our question. Which of these vessels most represented the significance of this divine dwelling? In which of these various functions did the primary object and raison d'etre of the edifice lie? Was it the outer, the inner, the very inner? So two great commentators offer two contrasting perspectives of this question, similar to our two architects. According to the Maimonides, the Holy Temple is most basically defined as a house for God that's there to prepare the offering of the karbonos, the offering of the sacrifices. Therefore, it would be the kitchen idea. According to Nachmanides, the main object of this temple is realized in the ark, where God says, I will commune with you and speak to you from above the ark. Now, according to the Talmud, when we are confronted with different opinions amongst Torah sages, we should appreciate that Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chaim, these and these are both the words of the living God. In the home we make, you and me make for God in our lives, where does God live? In the kitchen? Or in the library? What is our purpose in this world? To serve God with our bodies, or to serve God with our souls? Which is the greater mitzvah, to eat kosher or to study Torah? Which is closer to God, the honest businessman or the very learned sage? Which is the holiest part of ourselves, our physical being or our transcendent strivings? And this is my point today. In the home that we make for God out of our lives, where does God live? We must ask ourselves, in the kitchen or in the library? The truth is, these and these are both the words of living God. So take a look around your own home today and ask yourself, what is the center of your house? Is it the kitchen? Or is it the library, the living room, the family room, the downtime area of the house? It's up to us. The truth is, we encounter God in every part of our life. This is why, during the period of the 3 weeks, when we mourn the destruction of the temple, we don't just simply mourn on the destruction, but we anticipate it, we learn, and we look forward to the rebuilding of it. Of course, that'll be complete when Mashiach comes. And there's a very famous Ezekiel that says, Master of the world, why are you telling me to go? God said to Ezekiel the prophet, go and teach them how to build a temple. And he said, they're now in exile. Is there anything they can do about it? Let them wait and return, and then they'll build it. God said, should the construction of my house be ignored because my children are in exile? And he explained that the study of the Torah's design of the Holy Temple can be equated to construction. Go and tell them to study the form of the temple. As a reward for their study and their occupation with it, I will consider it as if they've actually built it. Therefore, during this time, we make an effort to study, to research how the temple looked, and to learn from the temple, to make our homes act and be inspired like a temple, but also to learn the very details. And as we're just learning here, a person studying and how it was built and its measurements, we will very, very speedily, God will consider as though we are actually involved in constructing it. So implicit in these wordings is that by studying the laws of the Holy Temple, it has ramifications far beyond the ordinary sphere of just some intellectual study. Rather, through study, a person fulfills his obligations to build the temple. So what was this Holy Temple? Having in mind that we ourselves, our own personality, our own world that we live in, we're also building a temple. The atmosphere that we create in our home. The atmosphere that we have throbbing within ourselves. First of all, the structure. The Holy Temple. We're talking about the Holy Temple that stood on the Temple Mount. In Hebrew, it's called the Beis Hamikdash. It was large, approximately a football stadium size, multi-level, indoor-outdoor structure that was the nucleus of Judaism, its most sacred site, and of course it stood atop Jerusalem's Mount Moriah. The first temple was built by King Solomon in the year 833 BCE. It was destroyed by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar in the year 423 of the BCE. The second temple was completed in the year 349 BCE by the Jewish returnees from the Persian exile, at that time led by Ezra and Nehemiah. In the year 19 BCE, King Herod completed the dramatic renovations to this dilapidated temple, and unfortunately the Roman Empire with their marauding armies came and destroyed it in 69 CE when the current exile began. Now, very little architectural data do we have about the first temple, but the second, that we have recorded. Both consisted of a tall, majestic, geometrical hall. It's called a hechel, surrounded by sweeping, stepped courtyards and castle-like stone walls. The outermost walls described a rectangular from a bird's eye view, within which there were stepped courtyards and a hall in the upper chamber, in the upper center. Within its wide courtyards, there were vast floor spaces for thousands of pilgrims who would attend triannual holiday services when they would come for Passover, Shavuos, and Sukkot. There was a mighty altar where thousands of animals and birds were brought for offerings, and storage and staff facilities for the hundreds of on-duty Kohanim, the priests, the Levites, who assisted the Kohanim. The hall housed a small incense altar, a ceremonial bread rack, a menorah, a holy of holies. That was a small square room at the back of the hall, formed by a wall-to-wall cloth partition, behind which was stored the Ark of the Covenant. The holies of holies was a space so ethereal that the laws of physics were suspended within its confines. It was entered only by the high priest, which was the most spiritual human being, on Yom Kippur, the most spiritual day of the year. Now, this temple's centrality to Jewish existence is reflected in the fact that many of the mitzvahs are temple-related. Daily and weekly offerings, holiday pilgrimages and offerings, personal, voluntary, and obligatory offerings, agricultural tithing, all these things. We're talking about 180 mitzvahs. 180 of the 613 mitzvahs are associated with the temple. So what is the significance of the temple? Why should we still anticipate and look forward to the rebuilding of the temple? The problem with the word temple is that Indiana Jones got to it. Today, whenever I say temple, I guarantee you you're picturing jungles, torches, dark, foreboding stone entranceways, jungle-like, entranceway overgrown with jungles, right? You know what I'm talking about. And don't forget the rats and the skulls and the fire pits and the jungle. Gewalt. Well, let me tell you what the real temple, with the jungle of pop culture. Let's talk about God's view of the temple.